for a purpose. The purpose of creation was to get to perfection. And in order to motivate us in our journey towards perfection, He instilled in us the love for perfection. We all love perfection, and we strive for perfection. You will not find a single person who does not love perfection. And there are obvious examples to that. When our clothes get dirty, we try to wash them, we clean them. We have to consider cleanliness as a kind of perfection. If, God forbid, a person does not have a hand, or if he is handicapped, he would like to remove that imperfection because he considers it as an imperfection, and if he can remove it, if he can remove that imperfection and replace it with an artificial one, he would. And if he cannot, he will try to hide it in public. This shows that we all want to get rid of imperfections, and the same holds for spiritual imperfections. If a person has a spiritual imperfection, like if a person is coward, for example, he would not like to be called a coward. If he is a miser, for example, he would not like to be called a miser. So he would do whatever it takes to keep that attribute away from him. He might, if it is possible for him to get rid of that attribute, he would. And if he cannot, he will show a display of charity in public so that he's not given the title of a miser. So all of this shows that we have this love for perfection within ourselves, and we are driven towards perfection. And it is the misdaq, it is what we consider as perfection that we are running after. If we consider wealth to be what generates perfection in us, we are after perfection. If it is fame that is going to bring perfection for us, that is what we are going after. If people think status and power is what will grant them perfection, that is what they will run after. But if all of these things were true perfection, the more wealth you have, the more satisfied you should feel. Because now you're closer to perfection. The more status you have, the more satisfied you should feel. The more power you have, the more satisfied you should be. But we do not find it so. The more power you have, the more thirsty for power you become. The more wealth you have, the more of it you want. And you're never satisfied. It means that these are not true masadiq of perfection. The true misdaq of perfection is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is absolute perfection. And He is, after which we are all running without knowing. And the closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we get, the more peace and more calm we are going to get. And that is what the Holy Quran refers to in this verse, in which it says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. It's in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the hearts find tranquility and peace. So we all have this drive, this motivation to get to perfection. What is the path to perfection? The path to perfection was laid out in something that is called the Sharia. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made arrangements for the Holy Prophet and the Imams to lay and protect this path to perfection. The reason why Imam Hussain alayhi salam gave up all he had was to protect this path that humanity needed to get to the perfection. It was saved for all times to come. Because if the Imam did not sacrifice all that he had, this path to perfection which the Holy Prophet brought for us would have been wasted. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made, after giving us the love for perfection, He made all the arrangements that humanity can get to the perfection that awaits them. And the sending of the prophets and the sending of the Imams are to serve that purpose. And the life of the Holy Prophet, the things that he did, was to help man grow to his perfection, get to his perfection. And he used different techniques in his life. And we as parents are also entrusted with this responsibility, that we should do the tarbiyah of our children so that we can help them get to the perfection that awaits them, that is waiting for them. And this is one of the problems that all parents throughout the world are facing. One of the greatest challenges that we all face is how do we do the tarbiyat of our children that they end up being the soldiers of the 12th Imam. They end up being in the camp of the 12th Imam when the Imam of our time returns. This is a great challenge that all of us as parents face, whether we live in the West or we live in the East. And the best methods were those that were used by the Holy Prophet in his time. Because he was sent to do the tarbiyah of the Ummah. He was sent to do the tarbiyah of humans. And the techniques that he used, if we can get inspiration from them and apply them in our daily lives with our children, then the chances of helping them get to their perfection and being in the camp of the 12th Imam will be far more higher. Today I'd like to talk about one such technique that he used with his companions, and that is of question and answer. Question and answer is a method of teaching that the Holy Prophet used to teach, to use with his companions. One day the Holy Prophet was sitting in the mosque and surrounding him were a lot of companions, and among the companions were two of the reciters of Quran, and they were reciting the Quran. And when one of them reached this verse of Surah Luqman, Alam tarawanna allaha sakhara lakum ma fis samawati wa ma fil arz wa asbagha alaykum ni'amahu zahiratan wa batinatan. Do you not see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has perfected for you all that is there in the do you not see that Allah has made subservient for you all that exists in the samawat, in the skies, and in the earth, and that He has perfected His blessings on you, whether they be the outward blessings and the inward or the inward blessing. And the other reciter, when he reached the verse of Surah Ibrahim, وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ, the Holy Prophet interrupted them. The Holy Prophet stopped them and asked them this question: what are those blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to remember? He threw this question at the companions and he waited for answers. Different people came up with different answers. One of them said, well, one of the blessings that we should be thankful for is food, shelter, family, religion. Different answers came. At the end, the Holy Prophet turned towards Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam and asked him, what do you have to say? Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam, because the reply that he gives, this shows how we should respect our teachers. He said, how can I speak in front of someone from whom I've learned everything? The Holy Prophet insisted, give me an answer. Answer the question. And when the Holy Prophet insisted, Imam alayhi salam answered the question as follows. The question was, what is the first ni'mah? What is the first blessing that we should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for? Amirul Mu'mineen said, the first blessing is the ni'mat of ijad, the ni'mat of creation. I did not exist, He created me. This is the first ni'mat that matters to us. All other ni'mat are secondary. If we did not exist, the ni'mat of air, water, food, shelter have no meaning for us. The first ni'mat that we should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for is the ni'mat of ijad. The Holy Prophet said, yes, that is right. Then he asked the second question: what is the second ni'mat that you have been commanded to be thankful for? The second ni'mat Amirul Mu'mineen Islam mentions is that after giving me the ni'mat of creation, He put me in the animal kingdom. He did not put me in the plant kingdom, or He did not create me as a stone or those objects that are lifeless. God could have created us the way He liked. If I was a brick today, I would be serving a purpose somewhere in a building. Even the brick has been blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it did not exist and Allah has given it existence. So all that exists out there has taken from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they have no reason to complain, why did you create me like that? Because all are beneficiaries of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they've all taken something from Allah, and Allah did not take anything away from them. The Holy Prophet said, yes, that is right. This is the second blessing. Third question: what is the next blessing that you're supposed to thank Allah for? He said the third blessing that I'm supposed to thank Allah for is that even within the animal kingdom, He made me in the best image, the image of man. It would have been possible that He created us as an animal. If we were a horse or a cattle or whatever, we would be serving humanity, but God did not choose to create us in that form. He created us in the best image, the image of humans. And this is a ni'mah that I should be thankful for. The Holy Prophet said, yes, that is right. The question comes to mind here, what is the difference between a human and an animal? What is it that differentiates a human from an animal? Aqib, intellect. And what is it that differentiates humans from angels? Emotions. Because they also have aql. So, angels have aql and no emotions, no desires. Whereas animals have no aql, only desires. Their life is driven by desires, the desire to eat, the desire to defend themselves against their enemy, the desire to mate, the desire to live on their lives. So their life is governed by desires. And angels, on the other hand, their life is governed by aql. That is why they never sin, because aql guides them to truth. It guides them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they have no emotions, they have no desires, they don't sin. It is this man which has both aql and emotions, aql and desires. And there occasionally happens a conflict between desires and aql. So it is up to man now to decide whether to put aql in the driving seat and run his life based on his aql, or to put his desires in the driving seat and run his life based on his desires. And if he chooses to put his aql in the driving seat, he becomes superior than the angels. And if he decides to put his shahwa, his desires in the driving seat, he becomes worse than the animals. So this human has the potential. When a human child is born, there's a difference between the birth of a human child and the birth of other animals. When a cub is born, it is going to grow up ending up being a lion. A fox's offspring is going to end up being a fox. And so on. Whereas when a human child is born, we don't know if it is going to end up being a human being. It has the potential to become a human being. But that will depend on how he chooses to run his life. It will depend on the decisions that he is going to take in this life. If he decides to act on his aql, then he will end up being superior than the angels. But if he decides to run his life based on his shahwa, he likes something, aql is telling him this is not halal for you. Don't look at this face, looking at this image is not halal for you. But he is overcome by his desires and he's not taking his path to perfection. He's going to end up being worse than the animal. Question comes to mind. Are these desires that we are been blessed with, are they good or are they bad? The desire to eat, the desire to speak, the desire to defend ourselves against enemy, the emotion of anger. Are these good things or are these bad things? Wouldn't life be a better place if we never felt hunger? If there was no pain in the world? A lot of the suffering that people suffer these days is because they don't get enough to eat, for example. A lot of the fighting that takes place is because of hunger. So if suddenly there was no hunger in the world, if we never felt any pain, wouldn't a lot of suffering go away? Would this world be a better place then? Would this world be a better place? It seems so. Yes or no?
Yes.
But then why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given us the feeling of hunger, the feeling of pain? If you think for a moment of life without hunger and without pain, you will realize that life would not sustain itself if there was no hunger and if there was no pain. If you never felt any pain and you were walking down the road and you accidentally stepped on a broken piece of glass, would you even notice? There is no pain. You wouldn't even notice if you're sleeping and an insect came and bit you, or a scorpion or a snake. There is no pain. You would not notice anything. You would not notice any pain. And if you notice, it might probably be too late. So this pain, even though it is a pain, but it helps protect lives. It is what motivates you to run towards the doctor, to pay attention to it. Similarly, in case of hunger, if we never felt any hunger, we just knew that we have to take food, we have to consume food to live our lives, and we never felt any pain, the same would happen. Life would come to an end. And we see that happening on a daily basis. Most of your students in the university, when there are deadlines that you have to meet, and there's a lot of workload, what do? You start delaying your meals. You start delaying your meals. Once this is done, then I'm going to have my meal because there's so much work to do. Until a point comes where you can no longer delay your meal and you're forced to stand up and go and have your meal. If you never felt the hunger, you would keep on delaying your meals until you become so weak that life would come to an end. So by blessing us with hunger, by blessing us with pain, God has actually protected and sustained life on earth. Because without that, without hunger, without pain, life would come to an end. And so these are blessings of Allah. So if there is pain, if we see pain in the world, we should not question why is there pain. This pain is a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there is going to be pain. It has its purpose. It serves its purpose in the grand design of things. And even the diversity that we look around us, when we take our children out for a walk and they see the diversity in the universe, the diversity in humans, for example, then a question comes to their mind, why is there so much diversity? And sometimes they ask their parents, and it is those moments which we can use effectively to do the tarbiyah of our children in an effective style. Only if we had the right piece of information. When Hazrat Adam a.s. was created, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed him all of his offsprings till the day of judgment. His entire offspring, they were showed to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he looked at them, he realized that some of them were short, some of them were tall. Some of them were thin, some of them were fat. Some of them were beautiful, some of them were not so beautiful. Some were sick, some were healthy. Some were wealthy, some were poor. So when he looked at this diversity, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ask a question. He said, do I have the permission to ask a question? He was granted the permission. The question he asked, he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if all of them were alike, if they had the same height, same weight, imagine if everybody had the same weight, how much this world would become a better place, so much stress would be gone away. If everybody had the same height, if everybody had the same wealth, if everybody had the same color, then they would not be jealous of each other. Because jealousy, when does jealousy kick in? When you don't have a ni'mah, you don't have a blessing which somebody else has. That is when jealousy kicks in, and jealousy is defined as the desire, the desire that this blessing that someone else has should go away from him. Arzu is zawali ne'mate digaran. When you make this wish, you make this desire, that this ni'mah that somebody else's has should go away. That is jealousy. But if you pray to Allah that you should be blessed with that same ni'mah, that is not jealousy. So the question he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was that, why did you not create all of them alike? If they were all alike, they would not suffer from jealousy, they would not be jealous of each other. It is here where God subhanahu wa ta'ala explained to him the wisdom behind diversity in nature. He said, there is wisdom behind my creation, behind this divine design. And the answer that he gave, he said, I've created them in such a way so that when the sick looks at the healthy, he will realize that this sickness that I have, the absence of health that I have is not intrinsic to my nature. It is something that I lack, and just as this person has this health, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bless me with health as well. And this person who is healthy, when he will look at the sick, he will realize that if I'm healthy today, I can get sick tomorrow. So this health does not belong to me, it is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The person who has no wealth, when he looks at the wealthy, he will realize that wealth does not belong to me. Or to that person, I am lacking wealth today, I do not have wealth today, I can pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah can bless me with wealth today. And this person who is wealthy, when he looks at the poor, he prays to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, please do not take this wealth away from me. So as a result, he said, all people on earth, as a result of the blessings that they have, as a result of the blessings that they do not have, they will turn to me and ask me to bless them with those blessings, or they will thank me for the blessings that I have given them. And as a result, they will be, Ya Allah on everybody's lips. This is the purpose behind, the wisdom behind the diversity we find in the universe. We should all turn to Allah. According to one of the traditions, one day the angel Jibreel alayhi salam descended from Allah towards the Holy Prophet with greetings from Allah. After greeting the Holy Prophet, he said, Allah is sending his salams and his greetings, and these are the treasures, the keys of the treasures of the universe. And this is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you, and you have the option either to accept it or turn it back. And if you do decide to accept it, your status in the hereafter will not change. Because Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salam, because of the great kingdom that he was blessed with in this world, he will be the last of all the prophets to enter paradise. Because of the grand status that he was given in this world, the accountability will probably take so long that he will be the last of all the prophets to enter paradise. But the offer that the Holy Prophet is getting, the keys to the treasures of the universe, and if you do decide to accept it, your status in the hereafter will not change. The Holy Prophet turned it back. Looking at the sky, he said, I prefer that I stay hungry one day and I ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I am full the other day and I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aju'u yawman fa'as'aluk. I'm hungry one day and I ask you, Allah, for what I need, and I'm full the other day fa'ahmaduk, and I praise you for the blessing that you have blessed me with. So whether you are in a state of poverty or you're rich, in either case, you're being tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you turn to Him in this state? You thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the other state. So whether we have wealth or we lack wealth, whether we are healthy or we are sick, whether we are handicapped or we are salim, we are healthy, in all states, we should either be thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or turning to Him to fix the problems that we have in our lives. When Amirul Mu'minin as-salam said, that the third blessing that Allah has blessed me with is that He created me as a human. The Holy Prophet said, yes, that is right. So now that He's created us as humans, we should plan and make an attempt to stay humans by making our aql rule our lives and not our desires rule over us. Then the Holy Prophet continued, what is the next blessing that you are supposed to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for? He said the next blessing is that He blessed me with internal and external senses. The sense of feeling, sense of taste, smell. And we talked about that these senses, the external senses and the internal senses, like the sense of hunger, the sense of thirst, they are there to sustain life. They were needed. That is why they were blessed. We were blessed with them. The Holy Prophet said, yes, that is right. What is the next blessing that we should be thankful for? There's a list of blessings coming, and look at the order. It is reported that we pay order to the list of the blessings, the order in which Amirul Mu'minin Islam is listing them. The next blessing, Amirul Mu'minin Islam said, is that he created for me intellectual and spiritual faculties. The Holy Prophet said, yes, that is right. What is the next blessing? The question is continuing. What is the next blessing? He said the next blessing is that he guided me to truth. The Holy Prophet said, yes, that is right. What is the next blessing that you should be thankful for? The next blessing that he lists at this point is that he created for me eternal life in the hereafter. We are going to live forever. So then what is death? If we are going to live for eternity, if we are going to live forever, two questions. What is death? And then how does this make us different from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He lives forever and we are going to live forever. So how are we going to be different from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this context? And the second question is, what is death then? So what is death?
Ticket to the hereafter.
It's a ticket to the hereafter. So then why do we fear death? If death is the ticket to the hereafter, it is the transition from this world to the next. Death is not the end of life. It is a transition from this life to the next. So then why do we fear death?
We don't know where we're going to go.
When Hazrat Abu Zar was asked, the companion of the Holy Prophet, why is it that we fear death? He gave a very beautiful reply. He said, Ammartum ad-dunya wa kharrabtum al-akhirah. You have built your dunya and you have spoiled your akhirah. You have no place to go in the akhirah. That is why you're afraid of death. So those who have built palaces in the akhirah, they don't fear the akhirah. They would want to go into the akhirah. But those who have built palaces in this world and have nothing to go to in the next world, they're going to be afraid of the akhirah. So death is not something to be afraid of. It is the consequences of our actions that we are afraid of. And that's why we fear death, because we don't know what we are, as you said, we don't know what we are going towards. The second question, if we are going to live forever in the hereafter, and Allah is all eternal, is going to live forever in the hereafter, then how are we different from Allah then? In this attribute. This is a question which generally is asked, Shias are being asked, that then you assign the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Imams. And that is not right, and that is shirk. But an important, even more important question is, an attribute of Allah is that He is all living and He is always going to live eternally. There is nothing can influence Him. So He is eternal, He is immortal. And on the day of judgment, after we have been sent to the heaven, or we have been sent, or those who are the disbelievers will be sent after rejecting truth, when it came to them and they were aware and they knowingly rejected truth, they will be sent to the hellfire. Death will be brought before them in the shape of a sheep, and the angel will announce it, and everybody will turn and look at the angel, and the angel will slaughter the sheep before everybody. And it will be announced, those who are in heaven, continue to stay in heaven, for there is no death anymore. And those in hell, this is your destiny, and there is no death anymore. It is said that those in heaven would be so excited, they would be so overjoyed, that if death had not been slaughtered, they would have died out of excitement. And those in hell, they would have died out of worry. So, we are going to live forever in the hereafter. And for some believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send a letter through an angel. An angel will come to them with this letter. The letter will start, مِنَ الْحَيِّ الْقَيُّومِ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ, from the living who sustains himself, who is never going to die. مِنَ الْحَيِّ الْقَيُّومِ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ إِلَى الْحَيِّ الْقَيُّومِ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ, towards the living Hayy and Qayyum, the same attribute that goes for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alladhi la yamut, who is not going to die. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the same attributes that He uses for Himself, for some of the believers, not even the Imams. So then how is it different? And the content of the letter says, Amma ba'd, I am such that when I wish something, I say to that thing be, I say to it kun fayakun, and it becomes. وَقَدْ جَعَلْتُكَ تَقُولُ لِلشَّيْء كُن فَيَكُونَ, and I have made you today such that you now, when you say kun to something, it is going to happen. This is the power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless some mu'mineen with on the day of judgment. Because they lived their life in this world based on how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted them to live. And as a reward, whatever they are going to desire in the hereafter will take place. So the immortality of humans in the hereafter, how is that different from the immortality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There's a big difference. There's a big difference between our immortality and the immortality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our immortality is a result of the permission given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are going to live forever because Allah wills so. And the moment He takes away that will of His, there is no guarantee we are going to live. We will vanish, we will disappear. So our life is dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even in the hereafter, even though we are going to live forever, it is going to be coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 24/7 continuously. And that is what is going to keep us alive forever. And this is the difference. This is what makes our immortality different from the immortality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is this, it is this idea of our dependence on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always throughout our existence, every moment of our existence, that makes this, that keeps this away from shirk. If any one of us believes that he is independent, or the Imams are independent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have powers of their own that are not coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that is shirk. There is no disagreement in that. That if Allah has given them powers, then this is not shirk. This is Ayn Tawheed. Because we know that we are agreeing that the source of power is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whenever we find objections that we attribute attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to our Imams, this is not shirk as long as this dependence of our Imam on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. If that idea, if that concept exists, then this is not shirk. It will be shirk when that dependency is broken. Once you break the dependency, then that is dangerous territory to enter. When the Imam Ali alayhi salam, please recite the salawat. He mentioned the next blessing is that I have been given eternal life in the hereafter. He said, yes, this is the blessing that you should be thankful for. What is the next blessing that you should be thankful for? He said, the next blessing is that He did not create me as a slave. I am a free man. I am free. He said, yes, that is right. What is the next blessing? He said, the next blessing is that He made subservient for me all that is in the universe. All that is in the skies and on the earth. They serve me, and this is the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Holy Prophet said, yes, that is right. What is the next blessing? As he continued to ask this question again and again, Amirul Mu'mineen Islam replied, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. The verse of the Quran, meaning if you count the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will never be able to count them. The blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are infinite. No matter how much you list them, you will never be able to count them. Ihsa, you will never be able to do their ihsa. And when the Holy Prophet heard this, he praised Amirul Mu'mineen, saying, "Anta warisu ilmi." You are going to inherit, you are the inheritor of my knowledge, and you are the one who is going to clear for my ummah whatever they disagree about. So he praised Amirul Mu'mineen. Now one of the things that I want us to take from this is that the Holy Prophet, through this exercise, was reminding the companions of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one, and secondly, he helped them grow to the answers of Amirul Mu'mineen Islam to a point where they realized that you cannot count the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is the purpose behind this? There's a reason behind it. And we find the reason in this Hadith al-Qudsi, in this tradition which narrates that God subhanahu wa ta'ala did wahi, revealed to Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. And he commanded him, he said, Habibli ila khalqi, make my creation love me. Wa habib khalqi ilayya, and make me love them. Hazrat Musa replied, Kaifa af'alu dhalik? How can I do that? I don't have control over their hearts. How can you make somebody love somebody? You cannot force somebody to love somebody. So he turned back and asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can I make that happen? The reply came, Zakkirhum alai wa ni'mai. Remind them of my blessings. Remind them of my blessings. For when layuhibbuni, but if you remind them of my blessings, they will start to love me. You remind them of my blessings, they're going to start to love me. So we as parents, we want ourselves and our children to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you put the pieces together, there's a golden principle that we're getting from here. If we remind ourselves of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a result of that reminders, we and our children will start to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it can be turned into a game, and this is a practical tip for those who have children. You can test that, and it was actually, I did that with my children, and on the dinner table or at breakfast or at lunch, while we were having lunch or dinner or breakfast, whatever. So let's play a game. Let us count the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala one by one, and whoever fails to list a blessing of Allah loses the game. And we started with, for example, butter. Butter is a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next person, egg is a blessing of Allah. We started counting the items on the table, and once that was done, then they were thinking what else to say, and then suddenly they looked at the ceiling. Fan is a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they got the cue, and then bulb is a blessing, watch is a blessing, this is a blessing. They counted all the things in the room, and then when they were done with that, they thought about it, and eyes are blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They started counting the body parts. After 10 minutes, my eldest son, he said, wait a minute, Dad, this game is never going to end. Now this statement, that this game is never going to end, is a manifestation of the concept in this verse, وَإِن تَعُدُّ نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you count the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're never going to be able to list them, you'll never be able to count them. Now through this game, through this technique, they were able to get to a point where they realized how the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were infinite. Such techniques are what we should be using with our children to introduce the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather than just telling them that this is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this is what it means. We need to be more careful when we do the tarbiyah of our children. And when the Holy Prophet told Amirul Mu'mineen as-salam that he is going to be the inheritance, he will inherit his knowledge, and the other ahadith that are about Amirul Mu'mineen as-salam, where he says that Ana Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun Babuha, a few people decided to check Amirul Mu'mineen on this very hadith. He said the Holy Prophet has said that I am the city of knowledge and Amirul Mu'mineen is the gate of knowledge. Is he really truthful in what he has said, or he has just said because he is his relative? So they came up with a question, and he said this is the question we are going to ask him one by one after the other, and we'll see how he responds. And the question was, is knowledge better than wealth, or vice versa, or is wealth that is better than knowledge? And if he gives the same answer to every person who comes to him, then his knowledge is limited because he does not have a lot of different answers for the same question. His knowledge is limited, but if he gives us with a different answer each time we come, then the Holy Prophet is truthful in what he has said. So the first person, this is what they decided. So the first person comes to the Holy Prophet, to the Amirul Mu'minin Islam, and asks, Amirul Mu'minin, is knowledge better than wealth, or is wealth that is better than knowledge? Amirul Mu'minin said, certainly knowledge is better than wealth, because knowledge is what the prophets leave behind, and wealth is what Fir'aun and Haman and Harun leave behind. Takes this answer and goes back. The next person comes, Amirul Mu'minin, is knowledge better than wealth? Or is it wealth that is better than knowledge? So certainly, knowledge is better than wealth because knowledge guards you, whereas you have to guard wealth. Took this answer, he went back. The third person came, is knowledge better than wealth or wealth better than knowledge? Knowledge is better than wealth because the more you use it, the greater it becomes, the larger it becomes. Whereas the more you use your wealth, it shrinks. Takes this answer, he goes back. The next person comes in, is knowledge better than wealth? Or is wealth better than knowledge? Knowledge is better than wealth because those who have knowledge, they have more friends. And those who have wealth have more enemies. Takes this answer, he goes back. The next person comes, knowledge better than wealth? He says knowledge is better than wealth because knowledge never gets old where wealth gets old. He takes this answer and goes back. Next person comes, knowledge better than wealth or wealth better than knowledge? He says knowledge is better than wealth because knowledge lightens your heart, whereas wealth darkens your heart, it makes your heart, it hardens your heart. He takes this answer, he goes back. Next person comes. Knowledge better than wealth or wealth better than knowledge? He says knowledge is better than wealth because knowledge brings humility in you, whereas wealth brings takabbur in you. And he takes back this answer. And Amirul Mu'minin says at this point that if the entire creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to come to me one after the other with the very same question, I will give each of them a reply that is different than the reply I've given to the previous person. This is the city of knowledge, mashallah. What is ilm? What is knowledge? How do we define knowledge? Let us ask Amirul Mu'minin what knowledge is. He is, after all, the gate to the city of knowledge. When Amirul Mu'minin was asked about knowledge, this is what he replied. He said, Al-ilmu arba'u kalimatin. Ilm can be summarized into 4 phrases, in 4 sentences. It's important that we realize how ilm is defined in Islam, how aql is defined in Islam. When Amirul Mu'minin was asked about aql, he said, Ma ubida bihir rahman, tusiba bihil jinan. Aql is that through which Allah is worshipped. And paradise is earned. This is the definition of aql. If you want to see if somebody has aql or not, this is what you should check. Is he worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is he earning his paradise? And if he is, then he has aql. If he is not, then what he has is not aql. It might seem like aql. Because in the very same sentence after that, the person asked, what does Muawiyah has? Because for that person, it seemed like he's a very aql person. Amirul Mu'minin said that no, that is not aql. That is something that resembles aql. It's not aql. So similarly, we can be misled into believing that we have ilm, whereas in reality we might be lacking in ilm. We might not have ilm. So when he was asked about ilm, he said, Al-ilmu arba'u kalimatin. Ilm can be summarized into 4 phrases, 4 sentences. Number 1, an ta'badallah biqadri hajatik ilayh. That you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based on the amount that you need Him. You worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the extent that you need Him. How much do we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all walks of life. Every moment of our life we are in need of Him. His blessings, all the blessings that we have are coming from Him. So we should worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one component, one pillar of ilm, that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the extent to which you need Him. Number 2, أن تعصيه بقدر صبرك على النار. That you disobey Him, that you sin to the extent to which you can bear the hellfire. If you want to sin, then think how much hellfire you can bear. Can you bear the hellfire can you bear the fire of this world? No, we cannot even bear the fire of this world. That burns the skin, it does not burn the soul. The fire in the hereafter is going to burn the soul along with the skin. According to one tradition, the fire in this world is the fire of hell that has been extinguished 70 times and it has again ignited. So the fire in the hereafter is going to be at least 70 times more severe, more penetrating, more burning than the fire of this world. We cannot bear the fire of this world. How are we going to bear the fire of the hereafter? Astaghfirullah min kulli dhanbin. Allah forgive all of our sins that we have committed. The third pillar of knowledge is that an ta'amal bidunyak biqadri umrika fiha. That you work for the dunya based on the amount of life that you're going to live in this world. How much are we going to live in this world? 60 years, 70 years. So you work for the dunya based on how much you're going to live in this world. And the final phrase that he says, وَأَن تَعْمَلْ لِآخِرَتِكَ بِقَدْرِ بَكَائِكَ فِيهَا. And you work for the hereafter based on the amount of time that you're going to spend over there. How much are we going to live in the hereafter? Life in the hereafter is eternal. There is no death in the hereafter. That's eternity. So these are the four pillars of knowledge if you want to see if somebody has knowledge or not. The knowledge that Islam calls knowledge. These are the four pillars. So you can quickly do a litmus test of who has knowledge and who does not have knowledge. Look at his lifestyle. Look at, is he worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is he sinning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is he, how excited is he about the dunya and how excited is he about the akhirah? These are all signs to see and test how much knowledge, how much ilm we have. And death, and I will finish with this, approaching the last time, death is actually, as the brothers mentioned, is the transition from this world to the next. Death is not the end of our lives. Just like an embryo in the womb has to spend limited time in the womb, and at the end of that time it has to leave that womb and come to this world. So birth is not the end of life for the fetus. It is the end of its embryonic life and the beginning of life in this world. And in that womb it has to develop the hands and the eyes and the nose and the ears and all other body parts that it is going to use in this world. It does not need a mouth. It does not need a nose there, but it has to develop it there so that it can use it in this world. And if it fails to develop it in that world, it is going to suffer as long as it lives in this world. Along the same lines, when we are in this world, we are required and we are supposed to develop the hands and the ears and the eyes that we are going to use in the hereafter. And if we fail to develop them in this world, the eyes and the nose and the ears and the hands and the limbs, then we are going to live a life of misery in the hereafter for as long as we live. And the Holy Quran also points to this. When people in the hereafter, when they will be raised, they will complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, we had eyes in the world. Why are we blind today? We had ears in the world. Why can't we listen today? And he said to them, the meaning of which is that you had eyes but you did not see the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You had ears but you did not listen to the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to look, understand, listen to the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He enables us to learn, understand and implement Islam in our lives and in the lives of our families. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the early, quick reappearance of our 12th Imam, and that all of us and our children, our offspring are in the camp, end up in the camp of our 12th Imam. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the protection and guidance of our ulama, the maraji, and especially the wali amr Muslimin. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help the people of Palestine in what they are going through, and all the oppressed people in the world, especially people in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, all the mu'mineen all over the world who are being oppressed. because of their religion, because of their faith, and an end to all oppressive regimes in the world. Allahumma kulli waliyyika al-hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala aba'ihi fi hadhihi as-sa'ati wa fi kulli sa'a waliyan wa hafizan wa qa'izan wa nasiran wa dalilan wa 'ayna hatta tuskinahu 'arzaka taw'an wa tumatti'ahu fiha tawila.